everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Rob here at Smirking Gun Reviews, back to talk more Batman the Animated Series, and now we're going to be talking about Season 1, Episode 13. It's called The Clock King, and yeah, full spoilers if you've not seen this episode. This one's kind of a mixed bag, because while I think it's really cool that they use a villain that really nobody had ever heard of before, they went kind of deep into the DC lore for this one. I think almost it's because, I mean, I'm just theorizing here, but I think they just wanted a really cool moment in a clock tower with gears turning and everything like that. And they found this character named the Clock King. Or they're just so fond of the deep lore that they just thought that this was really cool and a chance to do something like that. There's a few writing problems, there's a few character problems in it. But otherwise, it's a pretty fun episode. It's one of the few that actually has kind of like you have to turn your brain off a little bit. But it also shows like a lot of the Batman villains, their stuff comes from like more psychological problems, and issues than just being bad people. And so this episode was directed by Kevin Altieri, so you know the animation's good. So the animation is solid in this. David Weiss wrote it, and Martin Pascal was the story editor. This also has some really good voice acting. Alan Rackins, I think it's Rackins. Alan Rackins, veteran character actor. He's still alive and kicking. I liked him. He was in that movie Showgirls. But for me, he was more famous as being Douglas Brackman Jr. on L.A. Law. We used to watch that. My parents used to watch that as a kid. And I just remember him. I remember his voice. Makes me want to go back and watch some of those L.A. Law episodes. I don't know why. Just out of pure nostalgia. But he also played Dharma's hippie dad on Dharma and Greg in the 90s. And he was really great at like such a change of pace from what we knew him from L.A. Law to this. And so, usually this is where I talk about one of the smaller people that's in like the production. But since this is another episode that's like heavily based on like the character, well, the main one of the main people in this is Mayor Hill again. Mayor Hill has a lot of enemies in Gotham, or makes a lot of enemies in Gotham. And we're going to talk about the actor who portrayed him in this, the voice actor. Because again, this is a guy who he passed away in 2005. His name was Lloyd Bachner, and I know I've said his name before, but since this is another heavily Mayor Hill episode, I figured I'd talk about him tonight because he's, I think it's pretty cool to talk about that. This guy's career goes back to all the way to 1946. His earliest credit is in something called the Mapleville Story. I don't even know what that is. I kept looking at it I love that when you start looking back, there's just stuff that it's so far behind my time that you don't recognize it. And I wonder, how long it's going to be, for people that are born now. I think about people that are born now or the last 10 or 15 years that look back at stuff from the 70s and 80s and they're like, what was that? I don't even know what that is. Nobody we live in this very nostalgia-aged culture where people do talk about things like the Golden Girls and All in the Family. So there is this remembrance up to a point. But I feel like once you hit the 50s and the 40s and the 30s, a lot of stuff is really gone. I was thinking about how the movie 1917 came out, and how, oh my God, it's been over 100 years since World War I. And it's just blowing my mind that, time-wise. And since we're talking about time, this is an episode a lot about time and all that. So, Lloyd Bachner, though, he goes all the way back to 1946. But he was also in Dynasty in the 80s. He did about 28 episodes of that. He was in Naked Gun 2.5. And his last credit in IMDb was something called The Commission back in 2003. So this guy's career spans almost 60 years. Literally almost 60 years. And that's really impressive to kept going and working from then. Because if you think back how old he must have been in 46, wow. It's really impressive. And his voice work as Mayor Hill is always really great. Mayor Hill is almost an antagonist in a way on this series because of how many problems he causes for Batman in the city of Gotham, even if he doesn't mean to, you know. Some of the trivia in here that is I found is the Clock King's real name is Temple Fugit, which is supposed to be, you know, like from the Latin, which is Tempus Fugit, which means time flies. I only know that, again, because of the X-Files. The X-Files had an episode called Tempus Fugit. The Clock King's address is 362 Brayfogle. If you know Batman comics, you know that Norm Brayfogle had one of the best runs in Batman, going about a decade, I would say. He's my favorite Batman artist of all time. I loved, and maybe it's because I grew up with it, but I really loved that time period. Thought his art was really good. He did a graphic novel. It was like an Elseworlds book where Batman was like it was like a Victorian age, where it was like the church had taken over, and like so everybody was like big priests and stuff instead of like cops. It was really cool. And like they had Superman locked in a basement, like experimenting on him and stuff. Check it out. I wish I could remember the title of it right now. But this character, he comes from the DC universe. His name in the books was William Tachman. And he was motivated by a need to provide for his sister because he mistakenly thought he was dying, and so he turned to a life of crime. And he was originally a rogue for the Green Arrow. He was also a member of the Suicide Squad. And he's also the first villain in the show to study Batman before he like kind of tried to take him on. Like he knew before this episode started, you find out he knows a lot about Batman. So before even putting in his plan to sabotage Mayor Hill's re-election, he had to know that Batman would be coming for him eventually, and wanted to know who was going to be coming after him to try to stop him. And that's also really interesting and really cool. And so just getting into the episode proper, like the setup of Temple Fugit is that he's a guy that's been riding the train in to Gotham with the mayor for a really long time. I don't know why the mayor has to take a subway train all the way into Gotham City. You'd think that he would have his own private car or helicopter or something like that, but to fit the plot, that's what happens. And like that's one of my problems with this story is there's a lot of things that you just kind of have to go, oh, okay, and that's a little surprising for a Batman episode. So this guy, he tells Mayor Hill that he's got like 20 million against him. There's a lawsuit against him, and it's really important. He's really stressed out, and the mayor tells him, hey man, if you walk into court and they see you like that, they're gonna think you're up to something. So why don't you relax, step out of your routine. Take your break at 3:15 instead of 3 o'clock. Go outside, enjoy your day. And so you see how rigid this guy is. This guy all about time, and I can relate to that. I can really relate to that because I usually time out my days pretty close together. Like every day, I know exactly when to do this. This is when I do that. Blah 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 blah. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm sure there's a ton of people that do the same thing. So I kind of understand why this guy is like being told, hey, why don't you break out of your routine? And then he does, and then, of course, everything goes bad. The one time he does something different, everything goes bad. He gets a ball thrown at him, the papers that he needs gets knocked out of his hands, they fall into a fountain, then he falls into a fountain. He ends up late for court, and they just throw the book at him, and they say, you were late. Now, again, I'm like, really? Is that how it works? That they wouldn't understand that a bunch of series of events happened to him that he couldn't help, and they would just say, fuck you, you owe $20 million. Like, again, it's a little bit of the plot saying we want to get to this point. What's the quickest, easiest way? There we go. And he snaps. I love that animation of like showing his face close up, like it was like really a dream sequence almost at that point, where he turns to the camera and he's just like, like. So we start with Bruce heading towards a luncheon, a breakfast for re-electing Mayor Hill, and he's behind Bruce Wayne, for some reason, so he should be in front. Even Alfred says if he wants to make it to his thing, he should probably be in front of us instead of us in front of him. And the traffic lights all go out, and there's like a crash. The car crashes. Alfred crashes the car into another taxi cab, and they're like, it's not anybody's fault. Bruce is like, look, the lights are all out. So all the traffic lights are all going crazy. Everybody's getting out of their cars, yelling at each other. And then over like speakers, it's like people are blaming Mayor Hill for the traffic problems. They're just like, oh, look at this. The mayor can't, even do the lights in Gotham, because they just see him there and start blaming him for the problem. Okay. Again, why is it his fault? I mean, he's supposed to be running the city, so apparently it's his fault if somebody sabotages the lights, or because the lights aren't working, somebody must have screwed up and it's all the mayor's fault. Up on a building, there's an explosion. I don't know why it had to be an explosion, but a big sign comes down saying, Mayor Hill sucks, time to re-elect somebody else. And Batman jumps up there, sees the guy, and wants answers. What did he call him? Wise guy? I need some answers, wise guy. And the guy's like, look, I'm not going to tell you nothing. He throws like this pocket watch. I do like the spinning of the pocket watches. He throws it over Batman's shoulder and it falls down and explodes. And he goes to like, I want to know what's going on. And he's like, all I'm going to tell you is the 9:15 is always 6 minutes early. Flips over the side of the building and lands on a train that's going by. He knew exactly when it was going to be there. But it's a little convenient that it was going to be there right during the time that Batman comes after him. Again, a matter of plot convenience, just so it would look cool. So him and Alfred kind of spend a good chunk of this episode together in the car investigating who could be doing this. He finds the place. They find the place where the traffic lights are controlled. He puts on some goggles, finds like a little expensive watch inside the gearworks that has a very expensive watch that was used to blow this thing up. And those things have serial numbers. He tracks a serial number to a guy named Temple Fugit. He finds his lair at the 362 Brayfogle, where it's a demolished watch factory, but underneath is a lair just like the Batcave, where he's planning all his evil schemes to get back at the mayor because of what he did. He's going to ruin the mayor's life like his life was ruined. The thing is, when they found out Temple Fugit, that his name was Temple Fugit, I can't believe they didn't make, like, Bats would usually make a reference, or Alfred at least, would say, Temple Fugit, you mean like Tempest Fugit, like time flies? It's like I don't know, that's a missed opportunity. I feel like Batman isn't as smart as he should be, but then sometimes he's like way smarter than he could be, and he even is using something that would not work, like in this case right here, when he's locked in the bank. So there's a bank that's robbed. There's a time lock on the big vault. He goes in there. It's a trap. It closes, and this is when you see like the guy, all the works that he put in, Temple Fugit, to study Batman, knows that you have all sorts of gas masks. So I'm going to remove all the oxygen from the room. I know that it takes your acetylene torch, just some amount of time. Too long for you to get out, so don't waste your time. Also, the bomb. If you touch the bomb and try to open it up, it's going to explode for any pressure. And it's all coming from a tape. And I love his hesitation to grab the tape. I love that. That's a little detail that really works. And he grabs it anyway. He breaks the tape open and starts unspooling all the tape. Well, meanwhile, yeah, I'm not supposed to touch my face anymore, right? Meanwhile, the mayor here, he's trying to open up this new station for Gotham. And, of course, no train comes. So Batman is in the vault, and he's taken the tape spool out of the tape cassette. Now, if you guys know anything about cassette tape, that shit is flimsy as fuck. And if you're telling me that stuff would do that, now I know he's being really careful, but he did all that, all taught. That shit would snap in a second. That box, there's no way, unless that bomb weighs like nothing. But then you have to factor in the weight of the box. It's a cool idea, but I mean, honestly, they could have figured out some other way to believe it. I mean, it really, again, it's cool. It makes no sense. And you guys know how much I love this show, but I'm looking at this and I have to talk about it, even though it's a cartoon, right? It's a cartoon, and I'm supposed to just be, but it's Batman, the animated series, and I hold it to a high standard. But I still just go, fuck it, turn your brain off and just enjoy it. It's cool, whatever. Even if the logic makes no sense. It's a cartoon, calm down. So the train station, finally you hear a train, but it's two trains, and there's this huge crash. And this is really cool. I mean, the animation here is fantastic, where Temple Fugit has two trains run into each other at the same time. They fly off the track. Everything goes kablooey. Well, the mayor gets kidnapped in the chaos. Gordon's here looking for him. And speaking of Gordon and Alfred, by the way, because both of those actors, I believe, have passed. We'll be talking about them the next time they have like a big episode based mostly around them. So this is where the episode all starts to like get to its crescendo, its climax, where the Batman throws a batarang here, blows up the bomb, gets out. It's really cool. Again, I can't overstate how great the animation is whenever Altieri is directing. It just always has a higher quality to it. I can't explain it. It's the same thing with when I think he directed like certain episodes of Tiny Toons. Like those episodes always looked fantastic, while other ones looked like somebody did like a bargain basement version of the characters. I don't know. So he's got the mayor at the big clock tower because of course. And he's got him balancing on like the hands of the clock, and at 3:15 the other hand's going to come and crush him. He's just laying there. He doesn't appear to be tied down, right? He's just hanging there. So like, why is he just not getting up and saying fuck this? Like, I know, like, maybe you think, well, where can he go? Well, he can crawl up. He doesn't have a gun. Yeah, he's got his little swordy thing, but do something. Nobody would just lay there and let themselves be crushed by clock hands, unless the mayor... I mean, you could make an argument that the mayor is a coward. And he kind of is. And he is a kind of a dumbass. I mean, he when he's confronted with Fugit saying, you're getting crushed at 3:15, does that mean anything to you? He's like, no. And he finally has to be specifically reminded that, this is who I am, and you ruined my life, and now I'm going to ruin yours by killing you. I mean, if you were just trying to get him from, like, ruin his career and get him fine, but now you've moved to murder? I thought that the whole plan was just to really humiliate him, but now it's been amped up to just killing him. Well, you did. Why'd you go through all that? Like, you could have just done this. If this was the end game all along, I mean, I guess you could say it was psychological warfare, and then to just really mess with the guy, you're like, now I'm going to kill you on a clock tower. So, I love it. He's like, you have an appointment with the Grim Reaper. But even better than that is there's a couple of lines from Batman that are, I'm gonna clean your clock. Yeah. And then he even says, he has a line, Clock King says, I can do this all day. I can do this all day, Batman. And we get the cool scene inside the clock tower where, they're spinning around and the guy's like moves to all the beats of the clocks. It's showing how much he understands time, which doesn't really make sense to the inner workings of the clock tower, but whatever. It looks cool, and again, I feel like a lot of this episode is based around, hey, we want to let's find a cool clock tower sequence we can do. It looks really cool animated. It's a really fun thing. I mean, even intellectually, if Clock King really used his powers as a villain, he would be kind of formidable because he's like a Riddler but for time. And he really understands it, and he really knows how to get certain things done. And Batman kind of has a hard time for a second with this guy. Of course he's going to lose, but like, again, I had to turn my brain off because they kind of make Batman a little dumber in this episode. Just a little bit, to fit the plot. And, because the guy's like, I know it only takes you 20th of a second to throw a punch. And he's like, oh, it only takes me a 30th of a second to do this. And he sweeps and he ducks, and the guy stabs with his sword and ends up in the gears. His metal clock hand stabs the gears. Now look at these gears. You know what really grinds my gears? Is the fact that these gears would stop grinding. Didn't even know I was going to say that. Would stop grinding over this sword, and then the whole clock just begins to crash and completely fall fucking apart. The whole thing just starts coming down. I'm thinking, okay, so the mayor, you're doing this to save the mayor's life, but you lose. This entire clock tower just completely collapses. All the structural damage that happens in this episode, in this one building, was it worth it? Was it really worth it? Like, now they got to rebuild the clock tower, And Temple Fugit says, there's, he's gonna, the place is falling down. There's always a way out. And he disappears. You assume that he died, but, no body, no death. And at the end of the episode, Mayor Hill gets out of it, and Gordon and Batman are saying, oh, so this was all over that. Like, he really wanted to kill the mayor and all this, and, how could anybody, live through this crash? And he's like, well, if I could, he could. And it's only a matter of time. And that's the episode, and like I said, I had to turn my brain off for a few things, but it is a really fun, cool things happen, cool looking things occur in this episode. There's a lot of fun lines thrown around. It's a good episode, just not the most logical one. But, it's cartoon logic, whatever. It's any kind of logic. This reminds me of somebody who just said, I want some really cool stuff, but things aren't going to make that much sense. And so that's the Clockwork King, or the Clock King. Next episode, I think, is a Joker episode. And so we'll be back with that. So if you like this review, please hit the like button, comment, leave a comment, let me know how I'm doing. What did you think of this episode? Share the video. If you know that you like people that like Batman the Animated Series, please consider sharing the video, subscribing if you're not a subscriber. You can find me on Twitter at reviews_gun. Otherwise, we'll be back next week with more Batman the Animated Series. Bye.